All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started here shortly. First, just a few housekeeping items. Please note all lines are muted, but we do want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions for our speakers, please do drop them in the Zoom Q&A section. We'll have dedicated time for audience Q&A later in the session. Please note, we are also recording this session, so an on-demand link to the recording will be provided after today's session. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump in. We're at the top of the hour. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here. We're here to talk about something that I'm pretty sure every go-to-market team is feeling right now, especially because it's the end of the fiscal year and we're gearing up for the next fiscal year. But right now, whether you are in marketing, sales, or customer success, you are trying to figure out how to grow your business, and AI is everywhere telling you how quickly you should be able to do that right now. Not only that, but AI is changing how much we can produce and how easily we can reach buyers. But there's still a challenge, I think, for most of us on the go-to-market side. And that is, and I've experienced this firsthand, well, efficiency has essentially gone up. Buyer trust has not followed that same curve, and buyers are more skeptical than ever. They receive more messages than ever. And if you're like me, you're ignoring them more than ever. And so today's session is about that gap, why trust has actually become harder to earn in the AI era, and what leading teams are doing differently, specifically how they're blending automation and authenticity so that their outreach feels credible, it feels human, and it feels, worth responding to. So let's jump in. Before we dive in, I want to just do quick introductions to who you'll be hearing from today. This session is a collaboration between Deeto and Samplead, and that's really intentional. We work very closely together, and we see this challenge from two very complementary angles. So as a way of quick introductions, I'll have each speaker just quickly introduce themselves. To quickly introduce myself, my name is Shauna Simawang. I am the CMO here at Deeto, and I'm very excited to help moderate this discussion today between Deeto and Samplead. So with that, I'll hand it over to my speakers. Gabby, can you do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. So nice to meet everyone. Name's Gabi. I'm leading the business development team at Deeto. Actually, was employee number two in Deeto, which is crazy to think about. And yeah, I've actually also been a Samplead user for a couple of years now. So using Samplead as well. But nice to meet everyone.
Same here. Really nice to meet everyone. My name is Gedalia Freund. I lead the go-to-market at Samplead. Also really excited to be here and also a user of Deeto for the last year that I've been at Samplead. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for being here to share your perspectives and your experience. Really excited to drill in. And so, our agenda today. Here's how we're going to spend our time together today. We have roughly 50 minutes. We have maybe 30, 35 minutes of planned presentation, and then we have an interactive Q&A session where we will also be taking questions from the audience. So again, please do drop any questions you have along the way in the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar panel. But first, we're really going to take a step back. We're going to talk about why the trust problem is here and why AI still can't solve that. And that's sort of the foundation for everything that we're going to talk about today. We'll dig into why scaling output is not the same thing as scaling trust, even though a lot of companies like to treat those things as if they're interchangeable. And then we'll get really practical. We'll walk through 5 specific ways that teams are blending AI and authenticity across the buyer journey. And these are not theoretical. These two gentlemen are actually going to talk us through kind of real world scenarios that they've encountered and how they've solved for these situations. And hopefully you can take some of those back into your organizations and actually see this impact for yourself. And then like I said, we'll go through a Q&A and a checklist that hopefully you guys can take back to your organizations. So let's start with, again, kind of the reality that I think a lot of us are facing right now. where automation is everywhere, signals are everywhere. There's endless numbers of sequences that we've built, and they've all mostly been built with AI written copy. And and all of this is just it's flooding our market, and it's candidly flooding our teams. And we are honestly, I think, really struggling to create meaningful buyer experiences. And so I think from an internal perspective, well, being able to do all of this so quickly and at scale, I think from an efficiency standpoint, it might look great. But I think from the buyer's perspective, and again, like I said, even from our own team's perspective, I think it can often feel candidly overwhelming. And so I think that companies have to change the way that they're approaching this. Buyers are, as I said, starting to tune these out. They're becoming incredibly good at spotting automation, and they can tell when a message has been stitched together in ChatGPT or Claude, instead of grounded in a real understanding about where they are and what they care about, and what their scenario looks like. And so the core truth hasn't changed. Like people still trust people, and we're going to talk about that a lot today. And in fact, in a landscape that's saturated with AI generated noise, I think authentic human proof and interaction and engagement has become even more valuable. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, how real voices are candidly one of the strongest differentiators that you can use in your current modern go-to-market motions. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about how, again, AI has been extremely good at generating volume. It's also candidly quite good at mimicking personalization, I think, on the surface. But you know, beyond things like job titles and company names and recent activities, it is really not good at manufacturing trust. It can reference a LinkedIn post, but it can't replace sort of that lived experience that your sellers can tap into and that your customers can help to amplify. And it certainly doesn't replace the credibility that comes with having someone who's actually solved this problem come and share kind of their real world perspectives. And we see this consistently across teams that buyers, they're not just ignoring these messages because they're irrelevant. Many of them are now relevant. They're ignoring them because they don't feel believable and they don't feel authentic. And that lack of authenticity is becoming that gap that modern teams are facing. And so that's one of the reasons why we're going to talk through some of the tips and tricks that you can use to address these issues. So that's where the shift happens, and teams are breaking through, and they're using AI differently. They're letting AI do what AI does best, which is speed, timing, prioritization, and precision. And at the same time, what we're seeing in some of our customers across both of our accounts is that they're letting kind of that authentic voice do the work of building the trust with the buyer. So over the next five sections, we're going to break down exactly what this looks like in practice. Each one is going to address a specific challenge teams face and the action that creates stronger engagement, why it works, and again, kind of real world situations that we've faced. And so with that, I am really excited to hand it over to the guys to take us through our first tip.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Shauna. I think that when we talk about, trying to replace AI heavy intros with real customer relevance, we should first think about or talk about the overarching problem, which is that playbooks traditionally relied and always have relied on volume. And we're with the understanding that the more you send, the more you're going to get. And then when AI turned up, we basically forced it and pushed it onto these old playbooks, which enabled us to scale way beyond anything we could have imagined. But when we did that, we also lost trust. The trust that we actually had to earn with the effort that we put in to research the accounts, learn about the person, understand who we're reaching out to and why. And so what we actually need to do is find a way to utilize AI to do things that we couldn't do beforehand instead of just doubling down on more of what we've done up until now. And I think that you can look at it from sort of three main points. First, the first idea is the actual data. So the rarer the piece of data that you can reference, the better. And the deeper you could get within that piece of data, obviously, is also a factor. The way that you tailor the message. So are you using AI to just rephrase specific messaging, or are you actually going in as a human and editing that specific word or tweaking the line? And then the third idea is also who's actually sending the message and who are we sending it to. So at Samplead, we like to call this like executive-led outreach. When you think about, like I said, who's sending the message and who you're sending it to, outreach that comes from executives or higher up within your organization, within your company, I should say, naturally is also more relevant for the person on the other side to answer. And it just increases the chances that they're going to respond. Um, that's how I see this. Gabby?
No, I think you said this perfectly.
Cool. Next one.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important in general, AI actually is really great at is timing, signals basically. So being able to like find reasons to be reaching out at the right time. And I think that's something that AI is doing really, really well. This is something that Samplead for us has been helping with, being able to like for outreach, our SDR team, could go and find reasons to reach out if it's a company that's hiring more, something's in the news. Really being able to find those signals are really important. I think where obviously it comes where the issue is you want to also have relevant data and a relevant story to share at that moment. So how can you match that moment with a proof point, with a story, with something that we say is more credible? We talked about this all until now, but there's so much content today. It's so easy to create content. There's a lot of volume. How can you be really specific with the content that you're sharing at the right time? I think is really key. So I like trying to think about different points in the buyer journey where we could be sharing relevant like proof points and information. If it's cold outreach, and you see someone that's, let's say, hiring for a specific role and that's like an intent signal for you, how can you show like, hey, this is an exact customer that we've helped at that same moment, this is their story, this is how we help that new hire do A, B, and C. If it's like, after a demo and on the demo, the prospect is sharing about a feature that they really care about, being able to show like a micro story about how similar customers have used that feature. Objection handling, I think this is, really important. If there's times where obviously you get objections from prospects, being able to show like, hey, this is exactly how a customer helped, how we helped the customer solve A, B, and C. So I think those are all like really important moments for marketing. I think like where I take this is how can marketers create some sort of like library of customer stories and proof points that sales could easily find for those moments that you could then go and filter. Okay, I have an objection. We're talking about, ROI. Okay, here's all the stories and proof points that I could be using for that type of objection. So I see a lot of like great marketing teams today are and I hear this more and more, are creating like these customer libraries, like proof point libraries. And I think that's like a really great place to start if you're a marketer and trying to like equip sales with that and making those moments even more impactful.
For sure, I could say that we use Deeto for all of those use cases, especially the library and the customer references and the sending prospects to go and hear about similar situations that our customers were dealing with and how they're sort of getting over those challenges. And I think like you said, doubling down on the rarer the piece of data that you find, the better the outreach is, right? The more personalized the use cases to that specific person that you're trying to connect, is it makes it relevant for the person that you're reaching out to and that you're speaking to. Um, that's absolutely something that we do. Cool. So turning cold outreach into warm credibility moments. I think that actually I look at this a little bit differently. I think that something important that we've learned here at Samplead is that triggers and signals are not just for like initial outreach itself, but actually part of the nurturing that you're doing for your prospects. Nurturing the prospects is a very delicate art, and if you do it properly, you can yield significant results from it. And I think the same rule applies to the follow-ups from the first message that you send. Basic follow-ups like, hey, just checking in, or did you see that message, or just following up, it all falls under this sort of automation category. And so trying to find a way to blend really interesting things that you find, potentially really interesting use cases that you have from your own library, meshing the two, understanding that this is a good time to maybe follow up with this prospect because now you have a company that you worked with in a similar situation, and the gaps that they had when it came to trusting that you can do what you do, you've proven it now with somebody else. Finding those interesting reasons to reach out and connecting the two is a very powerful tool. Um,
Yep. By the way, I think one thing here that's a good tip that's just here on the top right that I think is really important is just keeping things also somewhat short. I've seen in my life a lot of sales outreach that's super long, a lot of case studies that are really long. Like a lot of things are just people don't have time to consume, and we're at an age where there's no attention span. So trying to really keep everything like at points, short, easy to absorb, I think is crucial. Yeah, actually, this slide I think is very interesting. I think today I just been thinking about this also personally, how I just see the same messaging everywhere I go. Like every website, every LinkedIn posts, everything kind of sounds the same, and we all like know right where it's coming from. Everyone's using these adjectives, right? Like AI powered, seamless, category leading. So everything kind of sounds the same, and I think that's where we as go to market teams need to be able to understand how do we like break that noise, how do we stand out. um so I think this is also like where customer stories and proof points is really important to build that trust and to stand out. People, if I want to say we help improve adoption, that's great that I say that we help do that, but if I'm able to say instead of we help improve adoption, I could say X company, onboarded 127 users in 72 hours, that's already like proving something. Or instead of saying like, hey, we help with revenue and ROI and we're so amazing, instead of that saying, this is how we helped B customer with 10x ROI within the first three months. But being able to also really show that those proof points, I think is really, really important. And this is true for like anything that we do in go to market. I think for sales, it's obviously clear using this in your demos and your storytelling and your follow-ups. For marketing, right on their website, if you're on your website and you're just talking about how amazing you are and using these adjectives, not super interesting, but if you're sharing real customer stories, I think it makes a really big difference. Even for like customer success, right? If you're trying to upsell and cross sell your current customers, are you just talking about how amazing this new feature and capability is, or are you actually like showing to them, hey, these are how similar customers have used this new capability, these have been their results. So I think this is a really interesting topic, and a problem that I'm just seeing in the market is just like everyone kind of sounding the same, talking about how amazing they are. Everyone kind of sounds the same. I get so many messages that go straight to spam, honestly. And I have realized that I just like notice customer stories more, even in ads, actually. Like I think it was earlier today, I saw an ad pop up where like a company that I knew was actually advertising another company that I knew and sharing their results like 200%, whatever the number was. But that stood out to me immediately, was like when I saw this other logo and that they were using it. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Sure. I think for us, like nothing will sell your product better than a happy customer. And there's a real challenge here to be delicate about how you talk about the results that you're able to provide without sort of boasting too much. And you want to try and find a way to actually let the results sort of speak for themselves. And using Deeto has actually been an incredible tool for us, both on the website, so the ability, where it pops up and it's tailored to the person who's actually visiting the website. Obviously also with, a follow-up step in the funnel where the natural thing to do is to tell them, don't trust a word that I said, go speak to our customers. Here's a link to the platform. Here's a microsite that we use Deeto to create these microsites, where our prospects can go and interact with all of the content and actually book meetings with our current customers without us being in the loop. It really strengthens, first of all, the trust that they have in us, that we can just tell them, go speak to them. It's not my cousin, right? I can't get to choose who you're speaking to. Um, so this is something that has been incredibly powerful for us.
Gedalia, can we get your cousin to be a customer of ours? Or
I'll speak to them. I'm not sure you're going to want to speak to them though. Um, I think that when we talk about sort of making every CTA trust backed, there's this understanding or idea that you want to get your prospect to just, click and learn more. As long as they click, as long as they get down the funnel, as long as they book a meeting, we're so focused on the actual results. Um, Instead of trying to force it on them, we should try and make them want to jump on that call. We should make them want to click on that button. Um, I think the results of an action doesn't necessarily often reflect the true intentions of that action. So just because somebody came and clicked, book a meeting doesn't necessarily mean that they're in the right place where you want to actually have that meeting with them. And the ability for you to sort of slowly lead your customer down a certain funnel or pipe of information where the CTAs aren't necessarily, okay, book a meeting with me right now, but potentially learn a little bit more about how a similar customer of yours is doing these specific things. They end up coming to the demo or to the meeting or to your booth or to the dinner a lot more ripe for a good conversation where they have a better understanding of what you do, what you can offer. And naturally, this is something that we've been using Deeto for. Um,
Yeah, and this actually takes me back though to maybe the beginning too of like even the reason that you're reaching out to someone and then to what that CTA should be. But I think you need to have a good understanding, and obviously this is what Samplead's helping with. But having a good understanding of why you're reaching out to someone, what the reason is, like you have to have a good relevance reason to be reaching out, and then match that reason with like a relevant CTA. If they're just in the beginning of their buying cycle, right? You might not necessarily have to have a book a demo button or call to action. Later, you might be sharing more relevant content with them, just trying to build that trust first. I just too many times all the CTAs, like you mentioned, Valia, is like, right, book a demo, learn more. If I'm at an event, it's always just like scan, 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 right? Like that's all people care about. Instead of like trying to see what's like, where are they in their journey? What do they care about? What should be the next step really in this buying process? And then matching that CTA to that initial signal and outreach.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for taking us through those 5 tips and tricks, especially from the perspective of your learned experience. So we're going to go into a Q&A session now. As I mentioned earlier, if you have questions for our panelists, please drop them in the Q&A section. We have some questions we're going to go through, some questions that have already come through. I'll go ahead and get us kicked off. The first question is what buyer behavior shifts are you seeing that led both teams to basically lean into authenticity, even as AI becomes more central to sort of go to market? Gedalia, I'd love to send this one to you first.
I think like the main shift that I feel, and I feel it as a buyer as well sometimes, right, is spam fatigue. If any of us, I guarantee you right now, you open up your email inboxes, um, everyone, there's just amounts of spam there that even if somebody sent you the perfect message and everything was crafted and it's timely, etc., you're probably still gonna miss it. Um, And I said this at the beginning, but a lot of times we don't think of AI and authenticity as two things that can go hand in hand. We think of AI only as a tool that can enhance the speed and faster and more, like you said at the beginning. Um, and we need to actually take AI and instead of turning it into a spamming tool, turn it into a tool that can not just automate the speed of things, but actually the authenticity of things, finding deeper insights, finding those rarer data points that we can reference. And there's nothing wrong with taking a few extra minutes to make sure that what you're sending is actually on point, and on the right platforms where your customers are hanging out.
Love that. Love that. Next question for you all. Where do you see that teams are struggling the most when trying to balance sort of, to your point, efficient automation with signals that also feel personal and real to the buyers? Gabby, I'd love your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what Dalia just said, right? I think the biggest issue is people are just trying to scale too much. Like everyone is, which is great, but everyone is just always thinking about volume, 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 and automation and efficiency. So I think that's like just the first part of it is, yeah, you have to understand how you could scale and do more with less. Like that all makes sense. But also just need to think about how you're sharing the most relevant like message to your buyer. So like for instance, for us, I think it's great to have a tool that helps us like identify signals and moments to be reaching out. Like I used this example before, but companies for us that are like are hiring, that's a really good signal to be reaching out to a potential customer when they're growing their teams, when it looks like they're maybe spending money there, when there's new initiatives. So that's a great signal, and it's great to help scale and find those moments where I think we could be doing a better job is making sure that then we match that to a relevant message. And that doesn't have to be AI driven necessarily. It could be something manual. I think, we are still capable of doing things manually today. And if I see a company that, and this is actually an example of a deal that we closed recently, was we saw a company that was hiring. We reached out with a message, hey, this is how we've helped a really similar customer. We crafted like a very, very specific message to them that definitely talked about them. It talked about their competitors and how we've helped their competitors. It was something that AI could help with, but it was also a very like, it was a manual process. So I think it's like combining AI to help you get that volume, get to that scalability, but not being afraid to still do things, in a more manual way and thinking about the message and the trust that you're trying to create with the prospect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trust is essential. What results have you guys started to see when personalization is paired with customer proof instead of relying on AI generated messaging alone? Gedalia, I'd love to understand kind of what you guys are seeing at Samplead.
For sure. I think the everyone has metrics for like how many people opened and how many people replied and how many booked meetings did you have, but there isn't really a good metric for the quality of the replies, the quality of the responses, the quality of the relationship that you have. And I think that for us, it really depends on what stage the prospect is in. When did you meet them? Do you have a customer that's similar to them, obviously? And also, what was the initial outreach like? What's the basis for this entire relationship? So I don't have a really hard stat that I could talk about. We've seen an improvement of X% with doing this mesh, but I can say that the quality of the conversations that you're having when you mesh these two things together it's a different world. The person that you're speaking to comes to the conversation a lot more prepared. They understand the value that you can bring to the table. The questions that they ask you are a lot more on point and less sort of skeptical questions, I should say. Um, I think that's been the key element for us.
Amazing. And we've alluded to it, but Samplead is obviously one of Deeto's customers. And so we're again really honored that we're able to do this webinar together today because Deeto is also a Samplead customer. So I'd love to hear from each of you. I'll start with how is Samplead using Deeto today and what impact has customer voice had on your outreach and your pipeline momentum?
Cool. So yeah, so there's two, I think two core, two main use cases that we have. The first is our website. So we have um, I don't want to say too much, but you're always surrounded on the website by customers of ours talking about specific use cases of theirs, specific increases that they've had, ways that they've been using Samplead. So no matter where you are on the website, you always feel like you're not the only one who's potentially the first person using Samplead. And I think that's been a very strong place for us. The core use case for us is really creating these microsites for um, we have a demo with a customer, and then the next step you want it to be obviously book a next meeting with them, but also you want them to come more prepared to that next meeting. And so it makes it very, very easy from a logistical perspective also to send them to a microsite that's tailored specifically to them with customers from their industry, potentially talking about the things that they've been talking about or the issues that came up in your discovery call. Those microsites have been incredibly powerful for us. They book meetings directly with your customers. You don't have to now find the customer and connect them and here, this is somebody that I met. It's all kind of your customers know that it's happening. Um, that for us has been an incredible boost, and we've seen an incredible boost. And you see it when you come to the next meeting, someone who actually went and spoke to a customer of yours versus somebody who didn't have the time, so to speak, to take that half an hour out of their day. The difference in that second conversation is mind blowing.
Love that. All right, Gabby, same question coming to you. How is Deeto using Samplead? I also use Samplead myself, so I could answer if needed. But Gabby, I know you've been using it longer. So, what
Yeah.
improvements are you seeing in targeting, timing, and kind of overall outreach performance?
Yeah, I'll just maybe share quickly before that, just had like a meta experience where like we're talking about the importance of customer proof, and then we have Gedalia sharing his like customer story. But um yeah, I mean, Samplead, I think there's a lot of ways to think about this. I think like initially the biggest advantage we saw in Samplead was being able to help us like with targeting, which I think has been huge. I remember back in the day when I started off as an SDR, just like building a list of accounts to reach out to and contacts took forever. So like I think Samplead's been really helpful for us at building out like finding companies who are similar to our current customers, building out lists already for us and for like SDRs to be reaching out to. So that's already like a big time save. Then also finding like the signals, the reason to reach out to those people. Mentioned already a few of these job posts, news, LinkedIn posts that we could be referencing to kind of to talk about that could be relevant. All these different signals that we could be using for reasons to reach out, and then automating like the messaging. Obviously, when we include like we talked about stories, won't go into that, but in proof points that makes a big impact. But definitely have seen a lot of great results. I'd say both in just like the time that we need to actually build build these lists, and reply rates that have really improved since. I mean, reply rates today is such, yeah, it's very tough out there. So I think anything that we could be doing to improve reply rates is really important. And then obviously, like you can also see it here on the slide, but like booking meetings, what's that translating into? How many meetings are we actually having with potential prospects, and what are the quality of those meetings? Do you actually had a good reason to reach out to, and we were able to identify that and build like a good message around that? Not only are you going to have like a good meeting, but a meeting, but hopefully it'll also be a high quality meeting that results in opportunity in SQL, however you want to call it.
Exactly. Amazing. Well, thank you both. Last question. For teams who want to get started, what's the simplest and most impactful change that maybe they can make this week?
I think we have a tendency to do what everyone is doing and expect different results. So one of the things that we like to talk with our potential customers on the demo calls is saying, you know, what you're doing is right because you're doing what everyone else is doing. You're setting up you have your data provider and you have your email sender and you took the right steps because you're doing what everyone else is doing. Um, Understanding that the mentality and the mindset needs to change and that um, judging your results only based on volume, excuse me, is sort of yesterday's game. And if you want to win, you have to explore how AI can open up new channels in addition to the things that you're doing now and give you capabilities and abilities that you didn't necessarily have beforehand.
No, that's a good question. I'd say the biggest thing you could probably do, and I'm kind of thinking more of like putting my marketing hat on right now, is how do we build like a database of stories and proof points that teams could be using. I think the next step would also be like enablements. How do we enable the sales team? How do we enable success with those proof points? But I think it's starting off with like having a clear dashboard and or however you want to call it, library, spreadsheet with all of those proof points that you could easily filter. Could start pretty simple and get more sophisticated over time. But I think some place where all different like these different teams could go to find relevant stories, proof points, quotes that could support and help with their claims, is something that could be pretty easily done, as long as like you are like have been capturing those proof points and stories.
Amazing. Well, thank you both again so much for that. And thank you to our audience for questions. As we wrap up, again, we've been trying to make sure that this webinar is giving you all very practical advice that you can go apply to your organizations immediately. And so again, we'll follow up with the recording as well as an ebook that has similar tips and tricks that you can share within your organization. This checklist being one of them. Again, you can take this checklist back to your team over the next few weeks and really work to kind of strengthen kind of your approach as you head into 2026. The first step is again to strengthen your outreach foundation. That starts with identifying your most important customer stories and the ones that truly reflect your core personas, and not just the biggest logos, but the most kind of relatable stories. And then from there, just really make sure that you're refreshing your outdated quotes. Maybe you're replacing generic claims with real outcomes, especially on your website. Please do that. And then look at your sequences that you have and your campaigns that you have set up, and make sure that you're mapping where trust signals are missing. Um, the next is improve your timing and your targeting. And again, this is where AI can really shine when used correctly. So use intent, use persona signals to decide who deserves some of this high quality proof, these connections with your customers to speak directly with them. Adjust some of your sequences, maybe the earlier ones, so that relevance is based on the buyer's actual behavior and not just sort of that static personalization that we talked about. And from my experience, I strongly recommend testing at least one sequence where every touch includes a proof point, and just see how that experiment goes, and see if it improves sort of the response rates that you're getting. Last but not least, I'd say just make sure that credibility is easy to activate. To Gabby's point about sort of having a repository, if you have amazing proof points, it really doesn't help if it's hard for your reps to find or even harder for them to use. So make sure that you're making it really, really easy for them to drop automatically into conversations as effortlessly as possible. And, to that point about making sure that your CTAs are trust backed, make sure that buyers are seeing the validation before they even need to ask. So again, hopefully this checklist is helpful for you guys as you kind of start to do some end of year cleaning and preparation for heading into 2026. But again, really appreciate everyone joining us today. To quickly wrap up and take a quick step back and just connect the dots from what we shared today, it's not about choosing between AI and authenticity. It is about understanding their respective roles and how they can help you do what and when. But trust is going to be something that still has to be earned. That AI has not changed. In fact, it's definitely amplified that. So with that, I'd love for each of our speakers, if you are more or less familiar with one or both of our organizations, I'd love for each of our speakers just in closing to give a short explanation in terms of what your organization does and where our audience can maybe find more information if it might be helpful. Gabby, I'll start with you.
Yeah, try to keep this brief, but basically Deeto does three things very well. One is what we call like collect, so being able to collect anything from customer feedback, insights, testimonial stories at the right time. So also here based on different signals, when could we be reaching out to customers for feedback on a new feature, for win-loss analysis, or for a case study and a referral. Being able to manage everything in one place is the second part. So being able to create these customer libraries automatically, that's always updated, always fresh stories. Be able to make it easy for your team, for your customers to participate, to reward them as well. And then what we also talked about today is actually like sharing. How do we share those stories? How do we get it out into the world? If it's on your website in an easy way, to your prospects, into review sites like G2. So that's kind of the core idea of Deeto, and happy to share more. Find me on LinkedIn, and you could also see our website over here.
Amazing. And Gedalia, tell us a little bit more about Samplead.
Yeah, so Samplead helps you find those rare data points that we were talking about earlier. Um, Interesting insights from across the web about your prospects, We do what we call trigger-based outbound, which means we only reach out or only suggest the prospects to you once we find those interesting reasons to reach out. And the use cases for that specific tool can be either for pure cold outbound. Think of it the same way an SDR potentially is reaching out. You could use it for a more of a nurturing um, uh, uh, account-based marketing tactic. And where we've seen a lot of success has been especially when you leverage the executive profiles in your company, and also around events, inviting to events, getting people to come to your booth. Feel free to also connect on LinkedIn, websites down below. Looking forward to staying in touch.
Amazing. Again, thank you both so much for sharing your time and your perspective today. And thank you to our audience for spending time with us today as well. We hope this session gave you some practical ideas that you can take back and apply immediately. And as these gentlemen said, if you're interested in learning more about either Deeto or Samplead, please do reach out. We'd be happy to continue the conversation. So thanks again, and we appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.